So the maker of Hellish Quart recently said that they are adding binds to the game, and I think that's amazing as someone who plays a mainly point-oriented character. But that brings up something that needs to be added, and I think it is point control. I've been thinking about it since the game first came out, but it didn't make sense until they talked about binds. And if binds are in, then we need to be able to control the tip of our weapon. So today I'm going to be talking about what I mean by tip control, how it would be implemented into the game, and why it should be implemented in the game. Basically, we want to be able to control the tip of our weapon so that we can pick where it goes and also the angle of our weapon. Next comes the how. How would we do this? So basically, the player would enter long guard, which is usually for most people like a trigger. So I think it's this one on the controller. You'd go into long guard, and from there, you'd use the right thumbstick on your controller to choose where you want the tip to be. So wherever you point the thumbstick is where the blade would be. So for here, using this controller, this side would be for movement, and this side would be for tip control. And so far, that would work for every character in the game that's been made, because every time you go into long guard, they all point their tip forward, making it perfect for that thumbstick control to choose the angle of your blade. And finally, there are many reasons why we should add this to the game. The first reason being that it would add extra realistic layers to the game, but ones that make sense with what the game is trying to do. And let's be honest, what the game is trying to do is become a sword fighting simulator using physics. Fighting for blade control and angles in a bind are essential to swordplay and heavily physics based, so it makes for a perfect fit into the game. Another reason is in binds, fighting for the direct line to your opponent and beating your opponent's angle is a crucial thing, but it's also super fun, both for someone viewing it and for someone doing it. You can look at fencing, modern Olympic fencing, you could see that when people do it. It's one of the more gratifying things to see someone take control actively, so I think it would be a great addition in that sense. Right now, the auto parry system is lacking a sense of accomplishment when you parry. You just have to go backwards and it'll parry if your stamina is good enough and stuff. But if you were to actively be able to block an opponent's attack, you would get more out of it when you do it. And also would have a psychological effect between the players. I think it would be extremely interesting. And I don't think that active parrying should replace the passive parrying that we have right now, the auto parry, but I think it should be added on top, so it's just more layers of how the game can be played and how you can outplay someone within the system. And the last reason I think that tip control should be added to the game is more of a scenario. So let's say that you're fighting for the bind and you're trying to fight for an angle, but you end up losing. You would have to pull out your weapon, you'd have to disable long guard, and you'd have to have good footwork when you do that. If you don't, then your opponent would have the proper angle to attack you when you disengage. Another scenario would be if you're fighting for the angle and you purposely go on an angle where your opponent's winning and then you pull out to set up an attack. That would be like a feint within the bind, which would be another layer to add to it. I think there's so many ways that it can go with this type of gameplay that it just has to be added because it's so fun. All that being said, there's one con that I cannot avoid, and that is that this only works for gamepad. If you use keyboard or if you use an arcade stick like some people do, this would not help you whatsoever because you'd need a second joystick to play around, or a joystick at all if you're on a keyboard. But I think that with all the things that it adds to the game, if you have to play a gamepad to get the best out of this game, I think it's worth it. Like it'll be so good the more and more they add more features to it. So yeah, that's what I think should be added to the game. The game should have tip control added to it in long guard. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, whether you agree, disagree, did I miss something, do you think it's unrealistic, do you think it makes the game too hard? I'll tell you in advance. If you think it makes the game too hard, I don't care. But yeah, let me know. And Kubold, if you're watching this, I want you to know that I love what you're doing so far, and I hope you add this feature. But if you don't, no hard feelings, but I think it would be awesome. See ya.